Russia continues to hit civilian targets across Ukraine after a massive day of destruction on Monday.
The Turkish president says he'll talk to Russia and Ukraine in an attempt to keep crucial grain exports sailing out of the Black Sea.
Denmark casts its vote today in its general election, with the final outcome potentially being decided by the newly formed moderate party.
Russia's aerial attacks against Ukraine on Tuesday have been less intense since Monday's relentless barrage, but they're still taking a heavy toll, like here in Mykolaiv. Ukraine's air defences and war effort in general rely heavily on Western technology, including Elon Musk's Starlink satellite system. There are deep concerns on the front line after Musk put out a number of statements thought by many to be pro-Russian.
Не треба багато інформації. Прийшов, поставив, включив, підключився, все, тебе зв'язок працює. Передача інтернет, передача даних. Загубимо, це буде дуже потужний удар по засобам зв'язку.
The West's involvement in the conflict has caused deepening anger in Moscow. Vladimir Putin's spokesman has accused Britain of aiding a drone and missile attack on Russian naval ships in the Black Sea.
Также имеются данные, что Британия имеет отношение к диверсии, а говоря по-русски, террористическому акту в отношении жизненно важной энергетической инфраструктуры, причем не российской. Здесь очень важно это учитывать. Такие действия нельзя оставлять просто так.
Meanwhile, near Bakhmut in the Donetsk region, advancing Russian soldiers and Ukrainian defenders are now fighting a war of attrition. It's one of the few places Russia is still on the offensive. But with winter approaching, neither side is making progress here.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has made clear he wants to see ships loaded with grain continue to flow through the Bosporus out of the Black Sea. He says he'll talk to Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky over the coming days in an effort to revive the grain export agreement that Russia suspended after the attack on its fleet on Saturday in Sebastopol. Moscow claims it was carried out from the grain corridor, something Ukraine and the UN deny. Erdogan's mediation was key in reaching the humanitarian agreement within the framework of the United Nations, which unblocked Ukrainian grain exports on July the 22nd. They were interrupted in the first days of the war, which began on February 24th. Thanks to the humanitarian agreement, Russia and Ukraine have exported nearly 10 million tonnes of grain, alleviating the food crisis in many poor countries and achieving a substantial drop in prices worldwide. According to the UN, in only 3 months, the agreement, which is now in jeopardy, may have prevented over 100 million people from falling into poverty.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says that his country is suspending but not ending its side of the deal that allows safe passage to ships carrying Ukrainian grain for export. Moscow withdrew from the agreement, alleging that Ukraine had used a safety corridor to attack its fleet in the Black Sea. The UN says there were no vessels inside the corridor at the time. Well, joining me now is our correspondent Sasha Vakulina. So, Sasha, what does this mean, I guess, for getting grain out onto global markets? Do we know at the moment?
Well, yes, we do, and it's still going there on those global markets. According to the Joint Coordination Center for this grain corridor, 3 more ships left Ukrainian ports on Tuesday. Now, what we had yesterday, on Monday as well, there were 12 ships that left. So it's working, and it is on. Now, the United Nations and the Joint Center for the Grain Corridor, of course, they say that the movement of these vessels continues because this is the movement that's been agreed by a few sides. This is not the deal that was anyhow agreed between Ukraine and Russia. This is the deal that gets lots of sides there, and this one was the movement we've been seeing from yesterday and today as well. This has been agreed by Ukrainian, Turkish and UN delegations in this center. Now, Russian side have been informed about this movement there. So it goes on, and according to some estimates, what was happening yesterday on Monday, the grain was flowing out of Ukraine at a record pace over these initiatives.
Well, nevertheless, it does seem to be that shortages, or at least the threat of shortages, appears to be a key tactic in this war at the moment. Also a shortage of water in the capital, Kyiv, after missile strikes. Tell us more about that. What happened there?
The attack yesterday, Monday morning, all over Ukraine was the third time within just 1 month when Russia attacked exactly the infrastructure, specifically energy and now water infrastructure all over Ukraine. And what we've been seeing ever since the beginning of October, and there was attacks on the 10th of October, was that the energy infrastructure has been hit. Now, this is the way it works. Every time they got hit, Ukraine emergency services did their best trying to restore as much as possible within hours or maximum 24 hours. And as of yesterday evening, most of water and energy supply in Kyiv got already restored. What was left got restored this morning in Kyiv, in capital and elsewhere. So what we've seen happening with the food shortages, then with the energy shortages, with missile and drone attacks, now we can see the water supply as well being attacked.
Denmark's general election is underway, which could see a shift in the balance of power with the possibility of new entries to the parliament. The vote was called after one party withdrew its support for Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen's Social Democrats. The latest polls gave her left bloc an almost 7% lead over a centre-right alliance, putting her on course to continue as Premier. But she may have to turn to the newly formed moderates of ex-Prime Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen. His party is seen as winning around 10% of the vote, and he has hinted that he could join a coalition with the Social Democrats. For voters, the main concerns seem to be tax cuts, the cost of living, healthcare and defence.
I actually think it's good if we are forced to make broad negotiations and get a lot of people behind what we decide in Denmark. So I don't really like if it's only the red.
I think for me it's been the economy, that we are not actually stimulating the inflation in Denmark. I think that's a very important thing for me, and of course the Danish welfare system and how we're going to drive that in the long run has been very important for me.
I think for everybody climate is important. We can't ignore it anymore. But I also think that after Corona crisis, health issues are important.
There will also be close attention to the performance of the far right. A new hardline party, the Danish People's Party, was created in June, which could divide the vote at that end of the political spectrum.
A tough policy against protests and unofficial gatherings is one of Brothers of Italy's landmark policies, and that's why on Monday the government announced a crackdown on unauthorized rave parties, in particular following one rave party that was due to take place in Modena. Now, because of that, politicians from the left-wing Democratic Party said they will raise questions in Parliament after more than 2,000 Mussolini supporters gathered in the fascist dictator's hometown over the weekend to mark the 100th anniversary of his march on Rome, and said that the government should have focused on that rather than on rave parties, also because they say they're concerned about the consequences that such move could have in the future. Italy's new interior minister explained that there's a difference between the two, and the difference being the fact that in the case of the rave party, it had been reported to the authorities and to the police earlier on, and in the case of the annual gathering in Predapio, well, he said that it's an annual gathering first off, and secondly, it's an event that is being ruled by public order laws that in this case, he said, have been respected. Giorgia Meloni distanced herself from the event, saying, quote, that is politically very far away from her and her party. Giorgia Orlandi for Euronews in Rome.
This unusual-looking cargo bike is attempting to shake up the funeral business in France. This is Isabelle Plumerot's courbicyclette, a mashup of the French words for hearse and bicycle. She runs a small funeral home in Paris, and her new cargo bike is designed to take full-size coffins.
The bicycle hearse, the courbicyclette, is a proposal for families that I accompany with a new ritual, especially at the cemetery, to be able to make a slow, silent, quiet procession to the rhythm of the steps of the people who walk and who make the procession.
Isabelle's company, called The Sky and the Earth, hopes to integrate sustainable principles into the funeral industry to give the departed a last peaceful send-off.